Hi guys, it's Mrs. Seitz. Today what you're going to be working on is slope. So you probably have rode on some roller coasters before, or maybe some of you guys have gone down some really steep hills on your bike or maybe on a ski slope. But what a slope is it measures the steepness of a hill. But when we talk about it in terms of math, is it can talk about the steepness of a line. So if we're defining it, a slope is the rate of change between any 2 points on a line. And again, it measures the steepness of a line. To find the slope of the line, you find the ratio of the change in y, which is the vertical change, remember up and down, to the change in x, which is the horizontal change, so the change that goes left and right. So one way that we can define slope is change in y over change in x. So one way I like to think about that is rise over run. Okay, so your rise can be up and down. Okay, your run can be left and right. So you always rise up and down before you run and go left and right, which is kind of opposite of how you would graph points. Okay, so whenever we talk about a slope, okay, there are positive slopes. So think about going up a hill. So this would be a positive slope. You have negative slopes. So think about going down that roller coaster. We have undefined slopes. So this would be like you're falling off a cliff. And then we have slopes of 0. So this would be like a flat line. Whenever you look at a line, there's a clever way that I want you guys to remember of how to determine if your line is positive, negative, or 0. And there's some other clever ways too of remembering some other details as we get further into solving some equations and whatnot. We're going to draw one of my favorite things ever. It's called Mr. Slope Guy. So the first thing I want you guys to draw is a circle. Okay, so we're going to talk first about positive slopes. So to remember positive slopes or the increasing lines, we're going to give Mr. Slope Guy an eyebrow and a positive eyeball. So he has an increasing eyebrow and a positive eyebrow. Whenever we have lines that are going downhill or the other side of his eyebrow, these are called negative slopes. Kind of looks like he got punched in the face. So we have positive slopes that are increasing, so the way his eyebrow looks. We have negative slopes that are going downhill, so it kind of looks like he got punched in the face there on the other side. Okay, we have lines that are vertical. Vertical lines go up and down, and that's Mr. Slope Guy's nose. Vertical slopes are kind of strange. And we're going to draw his nostril right now. They are undefined. So we're actually making a U right now. And we're going to write over here to the side that U stands for undefined. Because there's sort of like no steepness to it. It's just sort of straight up and down. Next detail I want you to make is his mouth. This is called a horizontal line. He's kind of like meh. He's not too happy. Horizontal lines have slopes of 0. And you can see that by Mr. Slope Guy's cheeks. Now I'm going to make Mr. Slope Guy even more spectacular because in the future you're going to need to know about equations with slopes. So whenever we talk about undefined lines always start with an X. So we're going to give Mr. Slope Guy a little mustache. And that little mustache starts with an X. So undefined lines will always start with an X. We're going to also give Mr. Slope Guy a goatee. And anytime we talk about a horizontal line, horizontal lines always start with a Y. So Y equaling some number will give us a horizontal line. But that'll help us in the future with any time whenever we're graphing. Okay, but for right now, this is a clever way for us to remember some details about slope. So if we have increasing lines, they are positive. If we have decreasing lines, they are negative. If we have vertical lines, we think of Mr. Slope Guy's nose, so they are undefined. If we have horizontal lines, they have slopes of 0. And in the future, horizontal lines will always start with y equaling a number. And in the future, vertical lines will always start with x equaling a number. All right, so let's put that to some practice now. There's two ways that you can count slope. One way is if you're given a graph, and we're going to use this idea of counting rise over run. All right, so let's also use that idea plus Mr. Slope Guy to tell us whether the slope of the line is positive or negative. All right, so when I take a look at the shape of this line, it looks like it's going uphill. So if it looks like it's going uphill, the line looks like it's increasing, right? So if I go back to Mr. Slope Guy's face, I can see it kind of looks like it's going uphill. It kind of looks like this one. So it looks like his eyeball that looks like it's positive. So I'm going to say that my slope is positive. Okay, and the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to find the slope. Now, slope has a weird variable. It's m. So we're going to always write down m equals. Now, slope is rise over run. So we're always going to go up or down, then go right or left. Okay, so I'm going to choose to go and start maybe at my bottom point down here. And it's not wrong to start at the top and go work your way at bottom, and I'll show you both ways, okay? But basically, I want to count up 1, 2, 3, 4 units, or however many units it takes to get level with the point that I'm going to. So I went up 1, 2, 3, 4 units to get level with the other point. So I'm going to write that down so far. So since I went up 4, the rise is 4. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do for the run is I'm going to count how many units right or left that I'm going. Well, let's see, from the place that I left off, I'm going to count over 1, 2, 3 places. So since I went 3 places over to the right, it looks like my slope is going to be 4/3. Okay, now you never, ever, ever want to make this into a mixed number because we always want to think about slope as a unit rate, and we always want to think about it as a comparison of two things, meaning a ratio of comparing rise and run. If we would change that into a mixed number, we're no longer comparing two things. The other thing we always want to do is we want to make sure our improper fraction or our fraction is completely simplified down. 4/3 is simplified down. Even though it's an improper fraction, we're going to leave it that way. It is perfectly okay. So 4/3 would be our answer. Okay. So I went up 4 and to the right 3. So that way was okay. I'm also going to show you how if we actually started from the other point, how we would still come up with the same answer. So I'm going to erase this 4 and this 3 and show you how it can work the other way too. I know that the answer overall is going to be positive. But watch here. If I start at the point 2, 2, and I start and I go down this way, okay, I'm going down 1, 2, 3, 4 units, right? And then I'm going to know for the run of 1, 2, 3, I'm still getting the 4, I'm still getting the 3. The shape of the graph overall is positive, except this time I used this combo instead. Okay, so I'm going up, instead of going up 4 and to the right 3, I kind of reversed it out this time and I went down 4 and to the left 3. Doesn't matter what point you start from, we still have an overall positive shape and we're still going rise and run. All right, let's try it on the next one. Okay, this time the shape of the graph looks like it's going downhill, right? So if it looks like it's going downhill, if you go back to Mr. Slope Guy's face, look at Mr. Slope Guy's face. Which one of those choices does it kind of look like? Well, kind of looks like we've got this thing going on, right? Looks like it's going downhill, so it looks like the slope overall is going to be negative. All right, so we know that the answer is going to be a negative slope overall. So I'm going to write that down. Okay, I know slope is the variable m. I know slope is rise over run. Okay, here I go. All right, I'm going to start up top this time. So remember, I go up or down first before I go right or left. So I'm going to go start here and go work my way down to that 3, -3. Okay, so let's see how many blocks that was. That was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 blocks down. So I went 5 down. And then let's count how many we go either to the right or to the left. Okay, and then I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so it looks like I went 4 to the left. Okay, so looks like overall the shape is negative, so I got to put a negative sign with my answer. So the slope is going to be -5/4. I always want to double check to see if my answer needs simplified, but in this case, it looks like I'm good. Remember, improper fractions are okay. I don't want to change it to a mixed number, okay? Now, typically when we go down, this is more of a negative type thing. Okay, if you go down, it is negative. If we go to the right, like what we did, so I'll just draw the arrow, that is a positive type direction. So since we went down 5 and to the right 4, the overall sign was negative. Okay, another way we can think of it, if I go the opposite direction, let's say I started with the 3, -3. Let's say I rised 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units. So I went up 5 units. If I go up, that's a positive thing. But then I'm going to have to go to the left. 1, 2, 3, 4. If I go to the left, that is a negative thing. So do you see how if I wrote my fraction -5/4 with the negative sign up top with the -5/4, if I even wrote it like this, they mean the same exact thing. If that confuses you, just count your blocks of 5/4 and then look at the shape of your graph and see if you're going downhill, you know you're going in a negative direction. All right, let's look at this one. Find the slope of the line. Ooh, I know the answer already. If I look at Mr. Slope Guy, what part of his face is that one? Well, if you're looking at his mouth, you are headed in the right direction. If you look at the shape of his mouth, you got that horizontal line, so that might help you out with the graph that you have here. The slope of the line actually requires no work whatsoever. It's automatically a 0 if you know that the cheeks on a horizontal line or the cheeks of Mr. Slope Guy's mouth is giving you a slope of 0. But if you're unsure, here's how you would count your rise over your run. Remember, rise is up or down. So if I would start here at 2, -2, -3 and try to go to 3, -3, I can't go up or down any units to get there. So my rise would be 0, but the run would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units. Okay, 0 divided by 5 gives me 0. So that is why the slope of that line is 0. I'm going to pause the video and I want you to just look back and see what you were learning so far about just finding the slope of the line using a graph. So again, we're counting rise over run. So rise is up or down. Run is right or left. Rise, going upwards, is a positive thing. Going down is a negative thing. Going to the right can be positive, going to the left can be negative. Okay, and again, the shape of the graph is really important. Think about Mr. Slope Guy whenever you're trying to determine the sign of your graph.